Welcome to Throw Off the Lines, the podcast where we navigate life's changes, explore new horizons, and embrace the journey. I'm your host, Stephanie York, an executive coach with a passion for charting new courses on the water and in life. Ready for some total change? Let's dive in. Hi there, and welcome to Throw Off the Lines. This is Stephanie York, your host, and today's episode is about critical thinking, a skill we may be losing. And the reason this is a personal podcast topic for me, I feel like I'm really lacking focus. And by lacking focus, I can't dig deep into concepts sometimes. And I used to really enjoy going really deep on anything from genetics to space exploration. And I would read, doctors' reports and theses, and it makes me sad that I'm potentially losing some of my critical thinking skills. And especially with the political environment we've had in our country and around the world for so long, I think that critical thinking skills are really missing from the majority of the country because people are so automatically shutting other people down. In fact, some podcasters, I'm not going to name names, are teaching people to stop critically thinking. And so much of what we respond to, the AI algorithms that these places tout, you're being fed information from the algorithm on Facebook or the algorithm on Google and the algorithm on Yahoo and all these places we go to get information that we slip into allowing them to spoon feed us. And we read something, we feel like we're educated, but we have not come up with an opinion. We haven't looked at an opposing view. We haven't really critically thought through a subject. And I'm going to say it is very, very important for your long-term success and your mental agility to keep your critical thinking skills alive. And, I start to talk to people about some of this stuff, but yeah, can you imagine? I'm a bunch of fun at brunch. So, talking about this, when I talk to my clients or people who say I'm struggling at work, we have a lot of fuzzy thinking and we have a lot of a lack of attention span. I have it, and no attention to details. And, my clients say things like, I can't seem to get out of distraction mode. And it's as if we've been on a mental sugar diet, all sugar all the time. It's just stuff that fills our brain. And next thing you know, how many times do people say that they're on TikTok or they're on Facebook or something, and an hour goes by and they will have looked at videos and just let their brain be kind of hijacked or entertained. No new information comes across our desks. We don't often go out and say, hey, here's this theory on UFOs. There's drones all over in the sky. Oh, let me go dig a little deeper. Let me use the search engines that I'm a part of. Let me go and look for alternate views. Let me go and research other responses. Are these really UFOs? Do people think they're UFOs? Oh, what else could they be? Oh, this, so new information rarely comes across our desk, just things that are easily digested. And it's all dictated by the computers or the apps that we're on. And the mental exercise of digesting information, chewing on it, and coming out with well thought out or formulated opinions is a lost skill. So when I talk to my clients, we discuss habit formation, and I have an episode on habits. What are the things you're doing now you want to stop doing, and what are the things you want to start doing more of? And habits basically are being listed as either bad habits or good habits. Well, your thought processes are kind of fat and flabby. Yeah, that's where we're all at. I'm at it, and I'm actively working on critical thinking skills. So you're living on, as many people do, on a diet of, kind of sugar-filled, fat-full content that you're not having to bite off and chew on and digest and process. And that can make our brains lazy. And we have to fight to get that back. So why is it? And I talked a little bit about our current political state, the pandemic, the onset of overusing social media as a means of information, not taking the time to fact find ourselves. We have a total lack of open conversations as isolation has become the new norm. People are now, especially post-pandemic, we're so broken apart in our country. It's very biased one way or the other, that if you're in the middle and you want to hear from both sides, they demand that you denote which side you're on. And it's sometimes hard to get open, honest conversations with people about their thoughts and their ideas. Why do you think this person is better than that person? Why do you think politically we should do this? Why do you think this is a good standard for our schools? I'm not trying to start conflict with you. I want to hear what you have to say. But people are so afraid and so walled off and anxious about conflict that they will just blurt out an opinion and then run and hide. Young people find themselves kind of stuck in practical or survival thinking as a result of the pandemic. And they have gotten into habits of just surviving the moment and not really knowing how to go out and ask for a different response, or never being motivated to find out new additional information. Just kind of stay in your lane. Thinking deeply is not easy in a world that has tons of distractions either. So it's important to practice. It's really important to practice. To think deeply means we need to carve out time from our day. And if 40% of our day is habits, it's really hard to find the time to sit and really read what's going on in the government, really read behind what is in the budget details, what's in that law they're trying to pass. And we're allowing websites or other writers to tell us what something means when we should be doing that research on our own. So I'm going to list out several ways to boost your critical thinking skills, such as active listening and lifelong learning. And we're going to want to know, what does the data talk about with critical thinking skills? Many people struggle to think deeply and reflectively, and cognitive decline is accelerating with mentally stimulating activities decreasing. And that's terrifying for me because as we all live longer, and trust me, I've met a lot of older people who are physically going to live a long time. And even though they're not exercising, they're all taking medications and things that are going to allow them to live longer, but they are doing nothing to keep their mind sharp. And I know in my family, I have a history of brain degeneration, dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. So I'm terrified that I'm losing my critical thinking skills. And it's something I want to keep sharp because I want to be able to hold conversations and engage in the world, which is some of my favorite stuff, the rest of my life. So if I'm going to live longer, I want to live as healthy as I possibly can living longer. Empathy levels, because we don't have critical thinking skills, we often aren't thinking of the other side of a discussion. We aren't thinking of the other person's views. Our empathy levels have declined over the past 30 years, especially among the younger generation, with a 40% drop in empathy among college students compared to their counterparts 20 or 30 years ago. And I've got a source in the show notes about that. Loss of critical thinking can significantly impair one's ability to empathize, as critical thinking allows us to analyze situations from many different perspectives. But since we don't have that critical thinking skill set any longer, we can only see things from our perspective. We can't even imagine another perspective. And when you lose that ability, then we lose the ability to help others in the world. And right now, there's so many natural disasters. We can't afford to lose empathy. We need to be helping each other. All humans should be helping all humans, not hurting each other. The average American spends 5.5 hours on the phone every day. And we know that. My phone says I spend even more than that. It's shameful. But that distraction of being on the phone, that doesn't lend my brain to thinking clearly about new content. I'm doing this podcast and I'm working up these different episodes, and it's really helping me focus on topics. And every time I worked on critical thinking, it made me think of 5 more topics I want to do for a podcast episode. This is all stuff that I'm working on. So my podcast is really about how I'm rebuilding myself and how I'm working on myself. So you guys get all that. Burnout, paralysis, reduction of productivity. Mentally, it's as if your brain has hit a wall and we're all struggling to concentrate, and we experience memory slips. We get irritable and anxious because our brain isn't working at the level that we want or expect it to. This is happening younger and younger. I know that when when I'm distracted a lot and I'm not eating well and I'm not taking good care of myself, I'm not exercising the way I need to, I know that my brain is tired. And then I need to go and help somebody that's hired me as their coach. And I need to dig into their problems, and I need to have a creative mind process. I need to start thinking up scripts, and I've got to, they've got this scenario. They're having this problem with this employee. They need to restructure their whole staff. They need to fire someone. I need to be present and have my critical thinking skills present. And when I'm trying to do that and I'm not doing it well, I get anxious, I get frustrated, I'm exhausted, and then it impacts the rest of my concentration, and it can impact my day. And my clients cannot afford for me to not be 100% on my calls. So it does say over 75% of American workers say they've experienced burnout in their workplace at some point, and that impairs their cognitive function. So we're all so busy that we don't have time for critical thinking. So again, even more important that we revisit this. And significant numbers of people reported relying on inadequate sources of information and making decisions without doing enough research and avoiding those with conflicting viewpoints. And I've got to say, it's unsurprising that there's been a decline in people's ability to think deeply and reflectively in the past few years. Because I know that I personally am distracted with the news comes out, and then my news is only about what's happening in California with the wildfires, and it's only about what's happening in politics, and there's nothing about an earthquake that happened in Nepal where hundreds of people died. I get none of that unless I go out and actively look for it. I have to go fight through the noise to find information. And if I'm exhausted and I'm not aware that in order to create change, I'm going to have to experience some discomfort, then I can imagine that the other people who aren't even actively trying to work on their critical thinking skills, they're losing more and more skills simply without knowing it. So one concern in a report that was brought out is that changes young people had to make to deal with the pressures of 2020 are not temporary. Many young people seem to find themselves stuck in that survival mode we talked about, and it's impacting their ability to change, and it's going to impact their ability to move past survival, past resilience, and into adaptability. Critical thinking skills are incredibly important for you to be in adaptability. I have a podcast episode about adaptability, which is making changes when things happen to you, not waiting until after they've happened to you. Critical thinking skills are incredibly important for that. So if you're worried about how to handle major disasters, things that are going to impact you, and having the wherewithal and the resilience of your brain to withstand changes that are inevitable, you need to work on your critical thinking skills. So some key critical thinking skills are analysis. And there's going to be a list down in the show notes. So I want you to think about this. One critical thinking skill is analysis, the ability to break down information into smaller parts and examine it closely. For example, evaluating an article's claims by looking at the evidence and arguments provided. So here's an article about this is happening in our government. I'm not going to read the first paragraph and go, well, that must be true because I read it on the internet. Instead, I'm going to say, well, I'm not sure about that fact. Maybe they give a fact about all kindergartners don't know their alphabet or something, making that up. I'm going to go out and look for more information to see if that fact is true, because I don't want to take that, and that's frustrating. I'm angry about that fact. Oh, well, let's see. It's only in certain areas. There's only certain states, and they're averaging it out. So it's not true of all areas. It's not true of all states. It's not true of all kindergartners. And that analysis skill is not a hard one to work on. If you read something, don't take it as fact. Go and find an alternate article. Type in, is blah, 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 blah true? And then you're going to get more articles that are either pro or con that opinion. And that is basic analysis. And that's not that hard to do. Evaluation is another critical thinking skill. Assessing the credibility, relevance, and the validity of information or arguments. A lot of us have logged onto an article or a website and we've read it and we liked the content. It really spoke to us. And then they refer, hey, here's another article. I'm going to read that article. Okay, great. But now all of a sudden I've read 5 articles on this one website and it's very skewed one way. And I'm not doing anything to balance that information out. Am I evaluating the credibility of this source? Is this person a real journalist? Is this person somebody who is selling me something? Is this person somebody who has flipped their opinions in the past? Can I trust what they're saying? Is this source a respectable source? Somebody who really it's important to them provide accurate information. Judging whether a source of information is reliable or whether a solution is practical is all part of that evaluation skill. Now, problem solving, a huge critical thinking skill that I'm telling you, you must have access to when you're in an emergency response situation. And more of us are in emergency response situations. So problem solving is developing and evaluating solutions to complex issues or challenges. I'll take, you have to identify the root cause of a workplace conflict and create actionable solutions for that. That's an example that I deal with all the time when I have clients who have staff or clients who have really difficult, clients of their own. And I'm coaching them and saying, okay, what is the perspective of this other person? How can we understand where they're coming from? What can we do to resolve their problems and understand them better? What are 3 or 4 questions we could ask to clarify? Now, what do you have that can resolve those questions and those problems? And then what do you need to say in this way? This is all critical thinking. And this is all a way to problem solve based on complex issues, but looking for solutions by breaking it down. I'm not going to just say, you're too difficult to talk to. I'm not going to talk to you anymore, because that's what a lot of people do. They just shut you down. But when it's your business and when you're relying to feed your family on the money coming in and you really care about what you do, you put in the time and effort to understand the complexity of that problem and to break it down. Okay, this person's nervous and anxious and they've been ripped off before and they're just bringing a lot more questions to you because of their past experience. I'm going to try and ease their fears and answer their questions and ask a couple questions of my own to show them that I do care. Problem solving is a huge, huge step in better critical thinking skills. Logical reasoning. This is a tough one nowadays, especially if you don't have the bandwidth or the ability to focus. Making inferences based on evidence and using sound logic to connect ideas. So if you're drawing conclusions that follow logically from data or arguments that are presented, then you have logical reasoning. I'm not going to go too deep into this because it could get we could spend a whole episode on logical reasoning, but learning how to form opinions from several different sources based on the logic that's presented to you, that's a really good critical thinking step. Also, creativity. Thinking outside the box. Critical thinking skills are being creative. I've got this problem, especially the big bad problems where we need critical thinking skills more than ever. Maybe a natural disaster has happened and you've lost your home and you're scattered. You don't have your papers. Your family's in a hotel room. You don't know who to call. You don't have your ID. Everything's gone. Well, you're going to have to get creative. And if you've been exercising critical thinking skills and you've been doing logical reasoning and evaluating and analysis, then you're going to be able to sit there and you've got this healthy brain that's going to say, all right, well, we've got to go do this. I'm going to go find solutions. And here's 3 things I'm going to look for. Because if you've worked your brain and you're analytical and you're logical, you're going to have a lot more creative responses to problems, brainstorming multiple ways to address a difficult problem because you've been doing this all along. So I would say critical thinking skills are incredibly important if you're living in today's day on this planet. Reflection. Reflection is huge. A lot of people dream and they process problems in their dreams. Reflection is taking time to think about your thought processes and decisions to ensure they are fair and well reasoned. I've got a lot of people who are very knee-jerk reactionary, and they maybe have a really difficult client, somebody I'm coaching, and that client they've come back with 500 questions. They've fired 3 referral partners, and they're still coming back to my person, and they just want to fire them. I just want to fire them. And I say, well, do we need their business? Well, yeah, we've done everything. They're ready to go. Everything's been done. And I said, you've put a lot of time and effort into this. And yes, you're frustrated, but let's reflect back on what you're doing to make this decision. Take time to think about, what did I do? How could I do it differently? And what do I want to do? Instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I'm going to instead sit here and say, all right, this client, I'm going to ask them a couple more questions. I'm going to give it one more try. And I'm going to say, I will refer you to one more person, but that's it. After that, you've got to go on your own. And here's the problems that I'm seeing. Am I wrong? Ask for their feedback. And then say, I'm going to give this one more shot, because you've now done some reflection back on the entire process instead of just throwing your hands up in the air. Now, reflection doesn't mean you got to go write out pie charts and graphs and spend a day thinking through something, but it does mean, wait a second, I'm having feelings about this. Let's go back and be logical. Let's think and reflect on what's happened. And then let's come up with a solution based on creativity or logic or evaluation and analysis. Also, critical thinking skills is being open-minded. And this is one of the things I find missing the most. I'm here in California. We have wildfires. And when the worst wildfires hit, I had in the same day 3 people ask me questions like, why do people live where wildfires are? Another person said, why does anybody live in California? Another person said, why do they deserve to be helped? And these are people I work with professionally. And I just said, have you thought about all the natural disasters that happen in other places? And they hadn't. They just felt that it was their right to say these things to me, not knowing or caring what my opinion was about it or how I was feeling going through these fires. They just felt that they needed to project an opinion upon me. So I was able to hear their perspective, and then I gave them my perspective. And it was that willingness, that open dialogue that maybe they heard me, maybe they didn't, but I hear them. I love to talk about different opinions on things. I love to learn, but listening to an opposing viewpoint in a debate without immediately dismissing it is an act of open-mindedness. That is creative thinking. That is analysis. And what so many people on both sides of our country right now are doing is shutting things down. Some people on podcasts are telling people, don't even listen to them. They're going to try to convince you. Well, if you're so sure of your point, you couldn't be convinced. So open-mindedness is a critical thinking skill that will help you with analysis and evaluation and problem solving. And you never know when something somebody else says to you could be your creative solution in a dire situation. So being open-minded means you're also open to the creativity that could help you during critical times. So decision-making, choosing the best option after weighing evidence and potential outcomes, that's also a very critical thinking skill. I'm always shocked when I meet people who can't make decisions. It just floors me that they are incapable of it. But making a decision and analyzing what you're going to make a decision about, thoroughly working it out, evaluating it, and then coming to a conclusion and making that decision, that's a critical thinking skill. If you're just making decisions based on knee-jerk responses, that is not decision-making with a critical mindset. Communicating, expressing ideas clearly and effectively while engaging in a constructive dialogue and explaining your reasoning in a persuasive, logical, and respectful way is really important. If you're going to feel very strongly about something that's happening in the government or about an individual in the government, you should have facts to back up what you think and feel. And when somebody comes to you and says, why did this happen? Why does anybody live where the fires are? And I said, well, there's hurricanes in Florida and there's hurricanes that hit North Carolina and you're currently in a massive snowstorm. Why does anybody live I don't live in Kansas because I don't like tornadoes. So, I had those things, not meaning to, come back at them, but make sure that you know your stuff. So developing critical thinking skills takes practice and a willingness to engage deeply with information, ideas, and problems. And there's other ways that you can continue to work on it. And again, this is in the show notes. So if you want to become a better critical thinker, ask questions. I have my coaching clients constantly asking questions. Now, you might think, okay, I got to ask questions. That's going to take even longer. And I have no attention span and I don't really care what the other person says. But if you want to work on critical thinking skills, which again are survival skills in today's day and age, asking questions doesn't need to be an hour long, let that person rant. Somebody comes up to you and says something that's different than what you think. Say, well, how did you come to that conclusion? And, if you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. Say, you know what? I've only got a few minutes, but I'm wondering how you came to that opinion. Oh, so you're saying this and this. What do you have to back that up? I'm curious. And be honestly, openly curious. It does not mean that you have to change your mind. Listening and asking questions is a critical thinking skill. And by learning about somebody else's perspective, you're able to work on your empathy, because shutting yourself off and not using critical thinking skills walls you off in society. It's very isolating. It's depressing. You lose some of your purpose and you're no longer a part of the society. So ask a question, find out more about stuff. Another way to build critical thinking skills is analyzing and evaluating information, which we talked about. Break down arguments into their components. So-and-so said this on the news. What are the claims? What did they say is the truth? What evidence do they have to back that up? What are some assumptions that they're making? And what are the conclusions that you've come to yourself? Is this claim backed by solid evidence? Are these biases in the source or the argument? Fact check information from multiple credible sources. So such and such said this. Okay, is there any proof to back that up? Is that a real thing? Should I get really upset about this thing that I'm reading online or that person said in the news? That's one person who said one thing. Where are they getting that information from? Do some research, analyze, evaluate before you have an opinion. Before somebody gives you your opinion, you should feel strongly enough about your brain and your position that you analyze and research facts. Critical thinking. So another way to really work on critical thinking skills, and again, create those survival skills you're going to need, is challenge assumptions. Reflect on your own beliefs and assumptions. I've had to. I will sometimes say something like, blah, 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 this is happening over there. And somebody will say, well, that's not the truth. And I'll say, well, I thought it was. What do you know? And then they'll tell me something, and then I'll go and do some research and I'll go, I really shouldn't say that thing out loud anymore, because that thing I said was a knee-jerk response. That thing I said was an opinion. It was not something that I would have wanted to share. I want to be a better critical thinker. I want people to trust what I'm saying is well-founded in analysis and well-founded not just in, I feel like this should happen. This is what I think is happening, and here's why I think that. And I'm going to back it up with some facts, and here's some websites, and so challenge your assumptions about things. I mean, do you think the earth is flat? Okay, you think the earth is flat. There's a lot of information out there about the earth being flat, and there's a lot of information out there about the earth being round. Go and read some of both sides. And then when you get in a discussion with somebody about it, you have facts behind you. And if somebody gives you proof that, okay, maybe it isn't flat, here's proof scientifically, then we want to go and say, okay, I need to maybe change my assumption about that. Again, critical thinking skills is learning how to balance information and analysis. And when you assume things, it also is a terrible place to be when you're in dire straits and in an environment you need to have much more creative thinking. Another way to do this is practice logical reasoning. Engage in activities like puzzles and brain teasers or logic games to sharpen your reasoning skills. I know so many people who do the New York Times, the Wordle and the Turtle and the Birdle and the Fertile and whatever all those are. And I love Sudoku. So when you're making an argument or decision, ensure your reasoning is free of logical fallacies. Practicing logical reasoning is write down something you know to be true and write it down. You know this is true. And then go online and start looking up things that support that truth and things that oppose that truth. And you're going to be able to see what logical reasoning is. You'll be able to see how people are logically putting information on both sides of a topic, and then you'll analyze it and you'll be able to congeal your thought on it. Develop problem-solving skills is another way to work on your critical thinking skills. Break problems into smaller, manageable parts. Use frameworks like SWOT, S-W-O-T, where what are the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Or what is the root cause analysis to approach challenges methodically? How do I take a problem and look at all the components in the problem? And then how do I create solutions to each of those components? And then I put it together, and now I have a well thought out, a well-developed problem solving plan for that. And then engage in reflection. We talked about reflection. Take time to think back. Okay, I had that problem. How did I handle it? Did I handle it well? Could I have handled it better? I'm a big fan of journaling. When you're trying to work on critical thinking skills and you're working on yourself, journaling is like being your own therapist. Write down what you struggled with. Write down what you had feelings about. Come back to it in a month and you'll see immediately the growth that you've had. Seek feedback. Ask for constructive feedback on your decisions and on your processes. And if you're about to make a big decision and you've been working hard on your decision-making skills, ask for somebody to go over it, somebody who you respect and somebody who would be invested in your success. Stay open-minded, practice empathy whenever you can. We're all just humans. We're all just trying to go through things. We need to be kinder to each other. Things are not easy right now for anybody. Even if you feel like your side won, you didn't win. You're still struggling. Even if you think your side lost, you didn't lose. You're still struggling. We're all struggling. Everybody's having a tough time. Be kind. Be gentle. Listen more. Use your critical thinking skills. Also, improve your communication skills. Learn how to articulate what you're talking about. Reread an email. I love the plan of if I am emotional about this email or this text, I'm going to type it, but I'm not going to send it until I've slept on it. I'm not going to send it until I've eaten something, because sometimes hanger is a real thing. Build a reading and learning habit. Big fan of reading. If you're really struggling with attention focus, plan to read 5 pages in a book every night before you go to bed. Or when you sit down with a cup of coffee, have a book, read 5 pages. Everybody can read 5 pages, but you should always be on a lifelong learning habit. That's going to help your critical thinking skills. And reading and building your learning and being a lifelong learner will help every aspect of your future self. You'll lead a much healthier, happier life when you're older. Engage in real life practice. Use your critical thinking in everyday situations, like evaluate a news story for its credibility. Analyze advertisements for hidden messages. That's one of my favorite things because I studied advertising in college. And I love to look at an advertisement and go, you're selling me that? That's a lot of noise. It's a lot of color. And boy, it doesn't even look good. I don't even think I would buy that. I don't even want to taste it. But I had to break the ad down because the ad was catchy and fun. Make well-reasoned decisions about personal or professional challenges. If you're having a challenge at work, put it down on paper, do pros and cons, do decision models, think it through, ask for some input, some feedback. You will have been practicing critical thinking skills by doing that. Use different tools and techniques. You can leverage things like mind maps to visualize and organize ideas. The Socratic method is a great method. I'm thinking about doing a podcast on the Socratic questioning. It's where you examine the validity of ideas through probing questions. So if somebody gives you a response to something and you're not sure that you believe it, ask questions that have them expand on what they said. If they decide to shut down and get angry or something, then maybe go out and research that topic on your own and ask those questions. Type the questions right into the Google, Type them right into Google search engine. But start thinking of different things that can help you build your tools and techniques to be a better critical thinker. And practice patience. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with the other person. Be patient with everybody. We all need more patience. Patience is the easiest form of empathy. Patience for yourself is the biggest form of self-care. And all these things that you're doing, if you're listening to my podcast regularly, we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to perform better self-care. We need to be gentle with ourselves and with the world. So why are these things so important? Because improved decision making and improved problem solving, avoiding biases and being a lifelong learner, all of these things are critical to you surviving changes and adapting well in the future. So if you don't think that critical thinking skills are for you, then good luck, because I'm telling all of my people that one form or another of critical thinking is going to serve you well in the future, and you're going to want to have these skills. So they're listed out down below. If you have any questions, give me a call. Or send me a message through throwoffTheLines.com. And good luck. This isn't easy stuff, because critical thinking skills have really kind of gotten mushy. I myself am working really hard on them, and I hope that if that's what you want to do, I hope you find success. Be gentle. Take one thing at a time, every day grow and change a little bit, and by all means, have a total day. Take care. Thank you for joining me on Throw Off the Lines. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and extras, and leave a review, share it with someone who needs a total inspiration. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram and our Throw Off the Lines website. If you want to be a guest or have questions for the host, sign up on the website and we'll get back to you. Until next time, throw off those lines and live your best life.